in this video, I just wanted to tackle the subject of, would Cambodia be a good place to retire or to live long term? Depends on several factors, but for me, there's some things that would definitely rule it out, like some key disadvantages or cons. Firstly, I think the medical system is a horror. When I was speaking to the woman that they're Chinese Cambodian, like they've lived here for several generations. She owned the local restaurant that I was eating at. Her daughter told me that she was going to be in Vietnam, Ho Chi Minh City, in a few weeks. And I assumed it was for a holiday, but it wasn't. It was to get her medical checkup, I think her annual checkup. So that just shows you that anyone that has the money that can afford to get treated elsewhere, they will make the arduous trek. You know, it's not a short trip to Ho Chi Minh City from here. You got to catch a minivan like that one that goes for 4 hours or 4 hours minimum. And like I said, it went for 6 hours one time because I got a driver that was a rookie. So it took 6 hours from Battambang to Phnom Penh. And then from there, you got to book another coach from Phnom Penh to Ho Chi Minh City, which is around, I think, 7 or 8 hours. And the whole rigmarole with the visas at the border. So yeah, people are going through a lot of trouble to get proper medical care. So that's the number one thing that would dissuade me from thinking of Cambodia as a long-term destination, just the lack of adequate medical care. So if that's a concern for you, I think you would have to rule Cambodia out. Unless you just want to cross your fingers and hope that you don't have a medical emergency. Because if you do have one here, it is basically curtains. You're not going to get proper help. There's no proper hospitals. Maybe for minor stuff, like if you get a mosquito bite or a scratch, they will provide you with a band-aid. But that is about it. Maybe exaggerating a little bit there, but I don't think you want to be looking at anything serious, you know, a serious accident or something. Another thing is, yeah, the infrastructure. Like people mentioned the infrastructure. I got a comment saying the infrastructure here is not comparable. Many people will say that. I mean, it's no secret that, you know, the roads and public utilities are nowhere near as good over here as they are in basically any moderate sized city in Vietnam. Maybe it's just a peeve of mine, but I really don't like the roads here, how they're so dusty. Those are the two main cons that I can think of. I mean, one major pro for me is just the people are quite lovely out here. Unfortunately, the communication thing for me is a big hurdle as well. Maybe it's not for you because maybe you don't speak any Asian languages, so it'll be the same thing for you guys. But for me, I speak a little bit of Vietnamese, so Cambodia is real, you know, real hard to traverse for me without the language. It is, you know, you cannot speak to anyone. I mean, strangely here, there's more English amongst the lower, you know, the those on the lower end of the socio-economic ladder than there is in Vietnam. You know, in Vietnam, only the upper class, the rich, the upper middle class, they sometimes, you know, they sometimes can speak decent English, but in terms of like the laborers, the workers, stuff like that, you're never going to get someone with decent English. But in Cambodia, it's a little bit different. I heard some English just from like fishermen out in the fields, not fishermen, but like their kids, and just randoms that are kind of working lowly jobs. Anyway, I'll change some cash here. Yeah guys, so just to continue our talk about settling in Cambodia, I think the main attraction, as has been mentioned by several people that were thinking of retiring, is that Cambodia has the easiest visas, you know, for someone that's wanting to stay long term out of any country in the Southeast Asian region. You can get what's called an e-visa on arrival, and then you just extend that for 1 year with basically no paperwork. So it's very easy to get a long-term visa in Cambodia, which is a pro on the surface, but is maybe also a con. This guy was saying that he'd like to stay in 5-star hotels, or maybe it wasn't even 5-star. It was like a expensive hotel. And I said, why are you staying here, mate? You could stay at a cheap place like the one I was staying at. And he said, it's not the quality of the rooms that he's so fussed about. He just doesn't want to rub shoulders with the you know, the masses. So in terms of Cambodia, with the visa being so easy to get hold of and to settle long term in Cambodia, maybe some people have already mentioned it. There can be some shady expats, you know, because when there's no barrier to entry, you know, sometimes the quality of the expats is not as high as in the countries where they're actually required to have sufficient funds in the bank or prove their work credentials, etc. That's what I've heard anyway. Apparently Cambodia has the most like degen expats out of all the Southeast Asian nations. So what I've noticed is that does appear to be true, you know, like I've seen some of the malls and people shuffling around in flip-flops, which is not a crime. I don't dress very well myself. You know, I can hardly talk there. But yeah, just the expats in Cambodia. I mean, I spoke to one guy at the Indian restaurant, and he's telling me how his wife tried to get him to pay for some medical expenses for her mother. It was like $100, and he was like crying foul because he said he gave her an allowance of like I think it was like $100 a month, and he said she needs to take care of everything from that, and he's not liable to pay for this medical emergency. So it is pretty funny. But yeah, that is a major pro of living in Cambodia, is that the convenience of getting the visas. You can stay long term for very cheap, the cheapest of all the Southeast Asian countries. So Cambodia is the de facto home of all the people that want to stay in Southeast Asia long term, but they don't have official work or you know, proper papers. It's very easy to get a long stay here, like a 12-month visa. Yeah, because Thailand and all the other countries, they have like financial requirements. You know, if you want to stay in the country long term, like you got to shell out. You got to buy like retirement visas, elite visas that are thousands of dollars. Whereas Cambodia, it is just basically a few $100 and Bob's your uncle. I think like, I don't know the exact cost, but it's very cheap. So that is a major attraction, you know, like people that want the stability of having a place to stay long term, that they don't need to worry about paperwork. Cambodia is about your only option. Oh yeah, I just thought of another angle, is the food. And this is all subjective, you know, it's very subjective what kind of food people like. But in general, I think people do appreciate the cuisine in Vietnam. The cuisine in Vietnam a lot more than yeah, in Cambodia. The food, it is, I thought it would be cheaper. I thought it would be a lot cheaper, but paradoxically it is lower wages here but more expensive to eat out, or eat out at a certain level of quality. And I think that is because not many people here actually eat out. Most people just cook their foods at home. So the market is basically for foreigners and tourists, you know. And that's been my experience, you know. Most of the places that I ate out at, the other diners, were not locals. They were either foreigners, tourists, or they were kind of the elite, you know, of the local community, like Japanese or Chinese teachers. Because I'd noticed they'd arrive in automobiles instead of motorcycles. So the market's not that developed. Whereas in Vietnam, it's like every street corner, you're gonna have good food, you know, decent level of food for a very, very cheap price. For instance, one of the places I had to eat was at this Indian restaurant. And it's just, I don't know, man, you're just paying through the nose. It was like $8 for a curry. It was like 200,000 Vietnamese dong. You know, for 200,000 Vietnamese dong, there's a little cat. You could basically get any kind of dish. Like a bowl of pho, beef noodle soup in Vietnam is only 70,000, you know, at the tourist area, you know, for Vietnam in District 1. That's 70,000. That's like the top end of beef noodle soups. And that is really delicious. So food here is not a pro, definitely a bit of a con. Some of the foods are, I mean, you know, if you're going to cook at home, then that's no issue. But if you're eating out, then I think Vietnam just wins hands down for dining options. And not only quality dining options, but cheaper quality options. I mean, I'm comparing it to Battambang. I mean, it applies to Phnom Penh as well. Like in Saigon, maybe Saigon's a special case because Hanoi, you know, they also tend to close up shop very early. But you will still have options. Whereas here, basically after around even like 6 p.m, 7 p.m, there's nothing on the streets. It is dead quiet. So just the convenience, you know, if you don't adhere to a 9 to 5 schedule, you're gonna have trouble finding food or basically any kind of shops that are open after a certain hour. Wait, I think I'm lost, man. Oh yeah, it's over there. But yeah, it's definitely not a 24/7 culture. Not a city that doesn't sleep. It is a city that sleeps and sleeps early. Battambang. Also Phnom Penh is the same, which is good, you know. It's good. The productive members of society are always around early, you know, they're always up early. Whereas the dodgy people are usually operating at night, you know, as a standard rule, general rule of thumb. But yeah, so that is about it, man. The three major things that people will concern themselves with. Whereas like cost of living, I think it is quite similar. Obviously Cambodia is cheaper, but you do get a higher standard in Vietnam. You know, you're paying more, but you get more in Vietnam. But in terms of rent, stuff like that, I mean, rent, you know, obviously Cambodia is cheaper. Yeah, I'm gonna buy some uniforms from this this woman. I see her every trip. She's very friendly.